Hello everyone, and here are the details of today's video. We are entering a moment in world history when distant crises, separated by oceans and political cultures, are beginning to intersect. The new anti-submarine alliance between the United Kingdom and Norway, aimed at countering Russian activity in the dark waters of the North Atlantic, is not an isolated development, nor is Donald Trump's announcement of a strategy to prevent conflict with China over Taiwan merely a regional move. These events, occurring simultaneously but thousands of miles apart, signal a deeper structural shift, a global order in which great powers no longer operate in separate theaters, but in interconnected zones of vulnerability. On the other side of the world, Trump's Taiwan strategy represents a different kind of adjustment. His message is clear: the United States must demonstrate strength to prevent China from seeking coercive unification. Yet beneath the rhetoric lies a deeper recognition, one that U.S.-China rivalry is now shaping global politics more profoundly than long-standing tensions with Russia. Trump's proposal is both a warning and a gamble. It seeks to contain Beijing through pressure, presence, and political signaling, but it also risks reinforcing China's belief that Washington is committed to containing Beijing's rise at all costs. These two developments, Europe facing Russian submarines, the U.S. facing a possible Taiwan crisis, are not separate stories. They are chapters of a larger story, a world in which the stabilizing assumptions of the post-Cold War era have eroded. The idea that conflict will remain regional is gone. The belief that economic interdependence will ensure peace has faded. The hope that great powers can coexist without probing each other's red lines is fading. We now live in a multipolar world fraught with strategic uncertainty. Russia is testing NATO's resolve under the waves. China is challenging America's perception of regional order in East Asia. And Trump has stepped into this uncertainty, asserting that American power can restore stability even as allies question whether America's strategy reflects long-term commitment or political improvisation. Two flashpoints. An era of uncertainty. The currents underlying these events are global and accelerating. Taiwan today occupies a precarious position in global politics, not solely because of China's claim over the island, but because the promises of great powers rarely align with the island's lived reality. Trump's announcement of a strategy aimed at preventing a conflict with China is framed as reassurance, yet the impact on Taiwan is far more complex. For while Washington speaks the language of deterrence, Taipei lives under the weight of consequences. Trump's approach rests on a familiar premise: strength prevents war. In practice, this means expanding U.S. military presence, reinforcing arms sales, tightening technology restrictions on China, and rallying Indo-Pacific allies to form a counterbalance to Washington. This is strategic clarity. To Beijing, it is provocation disguised as prudence. And for Taiwan, it is an uncomfortable reminder that its future is often shaped by actors whose incentives do not fully align with its own. Taiwan understands that American support is indispensable, but it also understands that American politics is volatile, shifting with elections, personalities, and ideological swings. Trump's renewed assertiveness may strengthen deterrence temporarily, yet Taipei knows deterrence built on rhetoric can quickly crumble if not matched by consistent bipartisan resolve. The island has lived through too many moments when Washington's commitments were strong in speech but ambiguous in execution. Thus, Taiwan adopts a dual posture. It welcomes U.S. support, but invests heavily in asymmetric defense missiles, drones, and resilience infrastructure, reflecting the recognition that no foreign power can guarantee its survival. Taiwan's strategic doctrine is shaped not by idealism, but by an acute sense of vulnerability. The understanding that in a war scenario, the island will bear the brunt of destruction, regardless of who wins. Moreover, Taiwan must navigate the psychological dimension of Trump's strategy. While his posture aims to deter China, it risks accelerating Beijing's perception that peaceful reunification is slipping away. This creates a paradox. The stronger Washington signals support, the more China may feel compelled to demonstrate resolve, increasing the risk of military escalation around the island. Taiwan sits at the center of this tension, reassured by American promises, but also encircled by the consequences of great power signaling. Taipei also knows that American priorities could shift sharply if a major crisis emerges elsewhere, such as in Europe or the Middle East. Taiwan therefore places greater emphasis than ever on autonomy, safeguarding semiconductor supply chains, strengthening civil defense, and deepening ties with nations beyond the U.S.-China axis. Trump's strategy speaks of preventing war. Taiwan hears something different, the reminder that its fate lies between two great powers whose rivalry will define the century. In that space, Taiwan seeks neither triumph nor confrontation, only survival with dignity. For China, the Taiwan question is not merely a geopolitical issue. It is a matter of historical identity, territorial integrity, and national legitimacy. Trump's strategy, framed in Washington as a means of preventing war, lands in Beijing as an unmistakable challenge to these core principles. Where the U.S. sees deterrence, China sees encirclement. Where the U.S. sees stability, China sees provocation. And in this divergence, the seeds of escalation take root. Beijing's first reaction is conceptual, not military, a reaffirmation of its red lines. Taiwan cannot drift toward independence. Foreign forces must not alter the status quo. Trump's louder, more assertive commitment to Taiwan gives Chinese leaders the impression that Washington is edging closer to a two-China reality. This perception alone pressures Beijing to demonstrate resolve. In Chinese strategic culture, silence is weakness. A failure to respond invites further challenges. Thus, China begins by turning to its familiar levers of pressure. Military signaling intensifies. More aircraft crossing the median line, naval patrols circling the island, ballistic missile tests in nearby waters. None of these actions aim at immediate conflict. Rather, they serve as reminders that China treats the Taiwan Strait as its internal sphere where foreign interference will always be contested. But Beijing's most potent tools lie outside the military domain. China can squeeze Taiwan economically through trade restrictions, tourism bans, and targeted sanctions. These measures signal displeasure while avoiding all-out confrontation. They also warn Taipei that U.S. promises, however assertive, cannot shield the island from the consequences of proximity. At the same time, China broadens its diplomatic posture. Trump's strategy inadvertently accelerates Beijing's partnerships with Russia, Iran, and a range of global South countries resentful of American dominance. China presents itself as the champion of non-interference, contrasting Washington's containment posture with what it frames as multipolar fairness. For many states, this messaging resonates. Yet China's response is not purely reactive. It is also shaped by caution. Beijing understands that a premature confrontation with the U.S. could jeopardize economic stability and technological advancement, pillars of its long-term ambition to become a global power. Thus, China walks a tightrope, demonstrating strength without triggering a crisis it does not yet want. Still, the paradox remains. Trump's promise to prevent war by projecting power forces Beijing to project power of its own, creating a symmetrical escalation. In this dynamic, Taiwan becomes the instrument through which two giants test each other's resolve. China's reaction, therefore, is not anger, but calculation, measured, deliberate, grounded in a view of history that sees time as an ally. Beijing believes that America's commitments may fade, but China's resolve will not. And in this conviction lies both reassurance and danger. Taiwan occupies a uniquely precarious position in global geopolitics. Celebrated as a democratic success story, coveted by a rising China, and positioned at the heart of America's Indo-Pacific strategy. Yet its greatest challenge is not simply external pressure, it is the uncertainty that comes with relying on a superpower whose strategic commitments are shaped by electoral cycles, shifting priorities, and domestic divisions. This is why Trump's new strategy, despite its rhetoric of protection, lands in Taiwan with mixed emotions. Publicly, Taiwanese leaders welcome American assurances. They understand that the island's survival depends heavily on Washington's willingness to deter Beijing. Each chapter has taught Taipei a sobering lesson. Foreign guarantees are valuable, but they are never absolute. This recognition drives Taiwan's current doctrine of self-reliance. Rather than depending exclusively on U.S. military backup, Taiwan invests in asymmetric warfare, mobile missiles, sea mines, drones, cyber defense, and resilient communication networks. The goal is simple: to make any attempted invasion too costly for China, even if international assistance is delayed or limited. Moreover, Taiwan seeks diversification of diplomatic and economic ties. It strengthens quiet partnerships with Japan, Australia, and select European states. It deepens integration into global semiconductor supply chains, turning its technological dominance into a form of strategic insurance. By making itself indispensable to the world economy, Taiwan hopes to anchor its security not just in military commitments, but in global interdependence. Yet the island's greatest dilemma remains psychological. Trump's strategy promises strength, but strength from afar can be destabilizing if it escalates tensions without addressing Taiwan's existential vulnerability. Taipei must weigh the benefits of U.S. deterrence against the risk of being caught in a rivalry it cannot control. Any signal of U.S. retreat could invite miscalculation from China, yet privately, Taipei strategists harbor an enduring skepticism. Will the U.S. truly intervene if conflict erupts? Will the American public support a war over an island most cannot locate on a map? Will U.S. allies stand together or fracture under pressure? Taiwanese society is acutely aware of this fragility. The island has lived through decades of shifting American policies, from Nixon's rapprochement with China to strategic ambiguity to Trump's unpredictable oscillation between confrontation and transactional diplomacy. In the end, Taiwan's search is neither for independence nor for confrontation. It is for a sustainable place in an international system increasingly defined by power politics. The island navigates this terrain with caution, humility, and a profound understanding that its fate lies at the crossroads of two giants whose competition is accelerating. Taiwan hopes for peace, prepares for conflict, and prays that wisdom will prevail where power now dominates. As tensions sharpen simultaneously in Europe and the Indo-Pacific, Russia and North Korea find themselves pulled deeper into a gravitational field shaped by their shared rivalry with the United States and its alliances. The question of which side they will choose is no longer meaningful. Both have already committed strategically, psychologically, and structurally to a world order defined in opposition to Washington's reach. Yet what remains to be understood is why this alignment hardens and what it means for global stability. Russia's path is straightforward. Since the invasion of Ukraine, Moscow's ties with the West have collapsed beyond repair for the foreseeable future. Sanctions have sealed this estrangement. NATO's expansion has reinforced it. For Russia, China now represents not just a partner, but a lifeline, a market for energy exports, a source of technology, and an essential geopolitical shield in the United Nations. Trump's Taiwan strategy only deepens Moscow's conviction that the world is dividing into two camps, one orbiting Washington, the other coalescing around Beijing. In such a landscape, siding with China is not a choice for Russia. It is the only available path to strategic survival. North Korea's alignment is shaped by different forces, but the conclusion is similar. Pyongyang sees in China a guarantor of regime stability, and in Russia a partner willing to challenge U.S. hegemony openly. Both countries offer what North Korea values most: protection from isolation and opportunities to circumvent sanctions. Trump's assertive posture toward China and the potential militarization of the Taiwan Strait pushes Pyongyang even further toward this emerging anti-U.S. axis. For North Korea, any conflict involving China is inherently existential. It will side with Beijing, not out of ideological solidarity, but out of necessity. The consequences of this alignment are profound. For the first time since the Cold War, the U.S. faces the possibility of a Eurasian strategic bloc, Russia providing military disruption in Europe and the Arctic, China projecting power in East Asia, and North Korea adding volatility to the Korean Peninsula. This triad of resistance does not function as a formal alliance. Rather, it is a convergence of interests born from shared grievances and compatible ambitions. Together, they complicate America's ability to compartmentalize global crises. A submarine standoff in the North Atlantic may influence Beijing's calculus over Taiwan. A flare-up on the Korean Peninsula may sap Washington's attention as Europe faces Russian pressure. In such a world, the U.S. must think in terms of interconnected theaters, not isolated regions. For all the talk of deterrence, the most significant shift is psychological. Russia and North Korea no longer see themselves as peripheral actors. They view themselves as part of a broader coalition reshaping the world away from American primacy. Whether this axis strengthens or fractures will determine not only the future of Taiwan or Ukraine, but the stability of the international system itself.